Jan Brandt. I'm an artist from Bloomington, Illinois. I have a gallery, Jan Brandt Gallery in town, and I have 2 degrees from ISU. One is environmental design and one is a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a concentration in printmaking. I do enjoy trying out all kinds of media. So besides being a printmaker, I'm also a painter, a fiber artist, and I also do mixed media.
Hi, my name is Krystal Lyon, and I am originally from North Augusta, South Carolina. I currently live in Chenoa, Illinois. I work here at the McLean County Art Center as the education coordinator. I work with fiber arts, and I do a lot of abstract sculpture with fibers and threads and fabrics and recycled materials. And I went to Augusta State University in Augusta, Georgia, and studied history and Southern culture.
My name's Natalie Wetzel. I'm a fine artist, and we live, my husband and I live in Normal, Illinois, and I went to ISU and I studied fine art with a drawing concentration and ended up graduating from there with a degree in art and a business minor. I'm really looking forward and really excited about the show that I'm going to be participating in with Krystal Lyon and Jan Brandt. They're both dear friends of mine, and I've admired their work for a long time, and I also have several pieces in my own home, and just felt a real connection to them as people and the way that they work, their processes, and the use of color and all those things. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all comes together.
I am bringing a great deal of hand-stitched, hand-cut, stuffed, embellished fiber art for this exhibition, as well as some paintings that also are dimensional. I like that play between 2D and 3D. And I think the installation of these with the other artists' work will be part of the art of it, the artistry of it, as we learn how to blend all of these elements into a different world.
So I have been creating abstract sculptures out of recycled materials and fibers, thread, yarn, fabric, and they've always been organic in their shape, whether it's with flowers or people, but during this time in 2020, I have focused on rocks and boulders to form an Ebenezer, which means stone of help or remembrance. So I've been focusing on remembering, and so that's what the boulders are representing. And then I've been making ladies, and I've always made fiber ladies. They remind me of women that I know. But I've started sewing buttons. I'm making faces completely out of buttons that are covered to represent eyes that see and witness and observe. And all of this is based on my own experience of just watching things and wanting to remember things. And so it comes from it comes from my own needs to do that, to remember and to observe and to see, rather than necessarily to speak into things. Yeah.
The work that I'm doing for this show is a little bit different, trying to stay true to who I am as an artist and hopefully have elements that people are already familiar with regarding my work. But because it is a collaboration, we're trying to kind of tweak things that will make it flow better, be more fluid, and more cohesive. So I primarily will have abstract paintings. I work mixed media. I work in several layers, one on top of the other, and I kind of flip back and forth between encaustic and alcohol ink and acrylic and paint markers and really whatever I can find that makes a mark. So outside of color, I find most of my inspiration through, I tend toward abstract imagery. I like macro photography. I have a past in photography, and I really enjoy looking at things from a new perspective instead of the total piece, but breaking it into parts. And so that's inspiring. In nature and anything floral, fauna, animals, insects, whatever, you'll find those sometimes in my work. I love under the sea, the ocean life. I don't like to swim in the ocean, but I am very attracted to the life in the world underneath that I can't see because I'm not a scuba diver. And I also, probably more than anything, draw inspiration through my faith as a believer in Jesus Christ. And most of my work, whether it's directly depicting my relationship with Jesus or not, it's flowing from my heart. And so it's always present.
Even as a little girl, I loved science, and I had the little toy science set you could get, and there was a microscope. It was plastic, and but there was a little light on it, and it came with its own slides, and you could look at these slides under the microscope, and this world that would be revealed when I would turn that little light bulb on just blew my mind. The colors, and many of the slides were stained with colors to make certain elements show better. And so there was that, very saturated color that I just loved. It was like, turn the light on, turn the light on. And then also the circles and the lines and the webbing and the connectiveness of what was happening within this little slide. I just thought it was beautiful and fascinating, and I've always wanted to know more about it. So even as an adult, I can remember that feeling of awe and wonderment, and I didn't totally understand what I was seeing, and I wanted to recapture that. If we could all get back to being the looking through things through the eyes of a child and just being fascinated with something. That's what I want that experience to be for myself and for viewers.
As my drawing instructor of 4 years, Harold Boyd, and he noticed early on, I wasn't even really aware of it until he brought it up, that I seemed to have circles in everything I did. And he pulled me aside and he's like, you really need to figure out why. What's that mean to you? What's the significance? I never really thought about it. So over the years, I've given it a lot of thought. There's still very present in everything I do. It's a comfort. It's kind of like putting on an old pair of jeans. It's just something comforting to me that I find in that circular shape. But I also relate it to life. I think that life itself, we go in circles. But even something as small as like a tiny cell in which everything's made up of is essentially a circle. So when I use circles, it's really an essence of life that I'm thinking of when I create with them.
I find inspiration, from a lot of different spots. In nature, I find inspiration from human interactions and the way that we walk through nature. Over quarantine, I spent a lot of time at a nature center up in Pontiac called Humanston Woods. And I drew a lot of inspiration from Humanston, of just the trees and the rocks, and even the wildlife that I would see, the squirrels and the bunnies. But from artists, I get a lot of inspiration from Nick Cave and his work with costumes. And his installation work is just beautiful. And then I get a lot of inspiration from Judith Scott, who is an outsider fiber artist that I adore. And she was the initial inspiration for the women that I create. And Sheila Hicks, who is also another fiber artist. So I draw from those three. I also pick up a lot of inspiration from my buddies in the collaboration, Jan and Natalie. And their exploration of color with and layers and circles and the organic matter that they create, whether it's on the cellular level or something bigger, has been very inspirational. Yeah.
My process as I'm making the fiber art is I have an overall idea that together I want it to have hills and valleys and different scales, different dimension, different colors, different textures. So that's in the back of my mind. But I don't have it all planned out that this is going to go next to that. I concentrate on either different component pieces, which may be an embroidery hoop full of different materials stretched that would be a wall piece, or there may be floor pieces. But I really concentrate on each individual piece as I'm working on it, and I just build. I build it, and then sometimes I think, what should I do? And then I think, well, that would be expected. What would be kind of funny or unexpected? And sometimes when you're making these bulbous forms and adding all these little pom-poms or things, they become kind of humorous to me. And they can even take on a feeling of a creature. And sometimes I think, well, what that looks like some kind of little monster, or that looks like something that you need to see a doctor for. But that's my sense of humor coming out. And I do like that there are multiple readings available on this. So even though overall there's an arching idea of that it will all fit together, it's more individual components.
So the new work that I'm creating, the boulders, it makes my room kind of look like a junk heap, because I save plastic, I clean it, and then I put it in bags, and I put it in these rooms. And so and my studio has all of these large garbage bags full of clean plastic in it. So you have to spend a little bit of time just collecting for a while. So that's part of it, is collecting and going through things and seeing, okay, well, maybe this really wouldn't work, or maybe this will work great. And then also I ask friends for things, and I put out calls for, do you have old clothes that you don't want to use, or old fabric, old yarn, old lamps. I use a lot of lamps, old floor lamps and table lamps as bases. And but then I also go out and look for things on the side of the road, and look for things at Goodwill, the Habitat for Humanity Restore. But the side of the road is always my favorite, because then it's really been discarded. It's been thrown away. And so some of it's like treasure hunt, and just gathering those things is different than like going to Michael's or Dick Blick and purchasing something. And so you kind of have to wait. And then the process of making it is, I have an idea in my head for what I want to create, a basic idea, but I'm way more of a gardener. I let something grow than an architect. I don't plan things very well, which means I have a lot of sculptures that are not balanced and cause problems and end up having to have a third or fourth leg. And so, but that's fine, because I like the way that they grow, and there's no mistakes in that. There's only opportunities to see which avenue it takes next. And so, yeah, so I come up with a basic idea, and usually in that there's a color scheme involved. I like to keep, some I have all the colors of the rainbow, but then there's some that just are blues or just are pinks, and that's really fun. So, yeah, and I just kind of watch them blossom and turn into the beautiful flowers that they are. So, yeah.
When it comes to the process that I use or the processes, I don't know how you say plural there, I, for one, am very intimidated by a blank canvas. It scares me to death, honestly. It's very, it just seems overwhelming. So the very first thing I do is literally throw paint all over it to kind of get that, that newness and that, blank canvas out of the way. And so I start gradually by just adding layers of ink and paint, and then I'll take a hot iron and use beeswax, which is an old term or it's called encaustic, but it's just basically pigmented beeswax. And I just go back and forth over and over and over and over until I've built up the surface and hopefully created depth and interest in. Some marks are very controlled and others are very chaotic, and I like having both of them. present. So, and that's pretty much, it's just a back and forth process.
It's just, I really enjoy giving things a second life, and so that's why I don't hardly buy anything. If I do buy something, it's from a secondhand store, so it was already kind of being given away and being discarded. And so this whole idea of using something again and giving it a second life is almost redemptive. And so it's something that was lost is found. And so that's why I like using those materials. It's not because they're cheap to use, it's because they're valuable and they have a purpose and value. And so it's really fun for me to see how I can use something again.
Probably the best way to convey, how my faith, comes into play when I make work is through the process. I am kind of split personality in that I like the aspect of letting the medium behave on its own and kind of throwing it down on a smooth surface and letting it just take on a life of its own. But then I have this innate need to go in and kind of make organized chaos out of the mess. And so it's a constant push-pull back and forth between literally just letting the materials do what they want and then going back in and saying, okay, how can I refine this? How can I set forth borders and edges? And with regard to my faith, that I think the best way to explain it is that, I know God's given us free will and we make choices, but I also believe He's sovereign over our choices. And those two things don't seem like they could coexist. It's kind of a paradox. But just through my work, I often think when I'm, I always tell my kids, you can't make a mess. There's nothing you can do that you can't fix when it comes to artwork. And sometimes you have to think out of the box to make that happen. But, it's just kind of the chaos of life and everything that, we're faced with day to day, especially right now during pandemic and everything everybody's been through. It's just a way for me to step back and say, God's, I make choices, but He's not finished, and He's still working good through, what I consider a mishap or mistake or whatever. And so I kind of view my art making that way.
With the fiber art, I really have concentrated on finding recycled pieces of fabric or textiles. People might gift them to me. They're cleaning out their attic. Here's some old clothes. Or I go to thrift shops. I did go to thrift shops because there's something really inherently historical and important to me as I cut through fabrics that have had a different life, because I'm turning them into a different life also. And also by using as many recycled items, then I'm also not, contributing to, all the waste in the world. So there may be some of my husband's old shirts. Some of my best friend's, mother that passed away, her Connie Houck's shirts end up showing up in a lot of these things that are having a new life. And I do, purchase things then to fill in, such as I may need muslin, fiber fill, thread, embroidery hoops. But as I've done this longer, even people will donate those kind of things to me. So that also adds to this idea of a community, and that it's sort of a growth. It's a growing thing. People have heard about it, they're contributing. I think that's pretty cool.
I hope it makes them laugh. I hope that it sits there and makes them ponder who they are and their own relationships to the earth that we inhabit, and the family that they have and their friends that they have, their co-workers. I hope it makes them ponder what their eyes see and what they remember. I mean, it's very interesting to me to think about the way that I've journaled over quarantine and what I will remember from this time. And there have been so many times where I haven't journaled and I haven't remembered, and those memories are just gone. And so what is memory and what is remembering? and what do we want to remember from this time. So I hope those are all kind of things that they will kind of think about, and like, what does a month of life look like? So each of my boulders represents a month of life. So they're made up of plastic that's been cleaned and recycled from a month of my own personal life. That's the stuffing. And so what did I eat during that time? What was shipped to me? What clothes did I buy from Old Navy? What is in my plastic? And so a month of life, what does a month of life look like? And so I would love it if people actually sat there and thought about, what does a month of my life look like? Can you hold it in your hand? What does it mean? Did it just go by and it doesn't mean anything? So yeah, those are some of the things that I would love for people to think about.
Yeah.
My hope is that viewers, as they walk in, they tell themselves that it's okay to suspend their disbelief as to what they're seeing. It's going to be a non-literal experience, although people like to find something they can grab onto and enter it. It's like, that looks like a person, that looks like a lake. Those are rocks, maybe, but it's unlike anything I've ever seen. So I feel that for people to be able to, let their expectations go, that something bigger and universal could happen. I think a sense of community as people walk through it, if there are other people there at the same time, or if people are watching it online, that, in this really larger sense of what art can do, is that they will understand by allowing themselves to think outside of the box, that this could also apply to many things, and especially things that are going on today. Not be so divisive, look for the beauty, look for the togetherness. Understand that things may not be what they seem. And what do we go forward with from there?
It's so fortunate. I am so fortunate to have met Jan and Natalie, because I already liked creating these sculptures, but they're so odd. And sitting on someone's coffee table, they don't make as much sense. They feel really foreign or alien almost, but they're at home when they're in Jan and Natalie's world. And the backdrop makes sense. They make sense. Like, their DNA and their makeup all is, it feels like home for them. And so they're comfortable in this space. We might be uncomfortable in this space because it's not our world, but they are right at home. And so they know where the refrigerator is in this space, and they know where their favorite part in the park is, and they can breathe easy in the environment that Jan and Natalie create. So I love it when they get to hang out in that space. It makes me so happy. So, and it doesn't happen very often.
I feel that it's really important to be part of this exhibition for a couple of reasons. The first one is, as we all know, this is a very difficult time in our history, our country, the world, our community. And I'm hoping that, and I really believe that this could happen, is that people experience this exhibition. It allows them to suspend their disbelief and have this poetic experience of relating to something that they don't quite understand. It may be, you've heard the term the other. We may be fearful of the other because we don't understand it. What happens if we put aside that and allow an understanding, a transcendental experience to occur? So I think it as a metaphor, this exhibition could be a really healing process for people that view it. That really, I hope that doesn't sound big-headed or whatever, but I can always hope. I am an internal optimist, so I think that even if it helps for 5 minutes, And who knows, down the road, more people seeing it online, it may bring a sense of togetherness, and I hope that that happens. Secondly, the show's going to be in the Brandt Gallery, and that was named after my mother-in-law, Jean Brandt, and it was rededicated, and I'm going to cry. I didn't mean this to happen. You have to edit that out. Okay.
Yeah, take your time.
The gallery that is titled the Brandt Gallery that this show will be in was named that in honor of my mother-in-law, Jean Brandt, who was instrumental in actually bringing together people to fund the Art Center moving from the old library, Withers Library, to this beautiful area, this beautiful place. The Withers Library, the ceiling was falling down, water damage was occurring, this was really needed. So Jean, my mother-in-law, she was very active in the arts, theater. She was a real hero of our community, and it's named after her. And then it was rededicated to my sister-in-law, Susie. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I just want to do a really good job. I'm sorry. That's just the truth, and that's why it's so important. And I don't know how much you're going to edit that, but anyway, she was a wonderful person, and when I was going back to school to study art, she was the most supportive person. And she was so happy I was doing it. And she didn't get to see my BFA show at ISU. She passed away before that, but I knew she was with me, and it's just a very important thing that I'm getting to do this.